reading his titles, please.
Wow, what a pleasure it is to be back in Fort Worth for so many reasons. I consider Fort Worth home. It's where I went to junior high and high school, graduated from Polytechnic High School, fighting parents. My parents are here tonight. I have the pleasure of spending the night with them tonight. And it was on this stage almost exactly a year ago when I first ran for this job. And my argument at that time, my promise, my commitment to you at that time was exactly what my commitment is now, and it's exactly what I've done for the last year. My argument was that this is too important of a role and too important of a time to be left to someone who does not have any experience. And that was my argument at the time. My opponent had never been a county chair, had never run an election, not even as an election judge. And that is literally the biggest responsibility we have at the party, is running elections. My opponent had never raised a dime for a political party. And I have raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for, of all people, the Travis County Republican Party. And if you think that's an easy sale, I'll tell you what, it's not. Well, and my other commitment was that I would fight for whatever we as delegates had made our platform. That it's not about my personal preference, it's about what the delegates have chosen. And I have lived that out these last 11 months. You've seen it when I met with the governor, you've seen it when I met with the Speaker of the House and the Lieutenant Governor, you've seen it when during the special session we got half of the things we worked for passed into reality. And these were things out of our platform that were important and common sense. Things like cities shouldn't be able to annex you without your vote. And pro-life things like hospitals shouldn't be able to put a do not resuscitate order in your file without you or your family. Being an insurance guy, that you should not be forced to buy an insurance policy that covers coverage for abortion procedures. That's what I've been fighting for. We have raised record amounts of funds because standing up draws attention. It's how we grow the party. It's how we grow into new communities. It's how we grow financially. It's how we grow in impact and in reach. And it's what we've done over the next year, and it's what we must do to continue to win in Texas, and not just win, but grow. That's what we must do together. So I ask you, vote for me for a state party chair so I can keep winning. Not tired of winning.
Now, I would invite Ms. Cindy Asche to come forward and give her oath.
Well, good evening, Tarrant County. I'm Cindy Asche, and it's a blessing to be here with you this evening. I am a Christian, conservative, Republican, and one other thing that even Vice President Pence can't say, and that is that I am a woman. And I believe that it is high time, after getting caught during the inauguration, the day after that, my husband and I got caught up in the very first Pink Hat March. And it was at that point, viewing the vile, vulgar things that were being said on poster boards and people wrapped themselves in, that I knew that we as Republicans, and especially as Republican women, have got to do a better job of captivating, activating, and motivating people with our message, because those pink hat women do not speak for us. Amen? Amen. I am running for this position because I think it is a critical time in Texas. Will we be the conservative folks that we are? Will we stand up for the conservative ideals that we have as Republicans? Or will we slip? I think it is high time that we do a better job on two major issues, and that is financial. We have got to raise more money for our party. You'll hear about the record numbers that have been raised, but folks, it's not even enough to cover our operating expenses on a monthly basis. And secondly, we have got to do a better job of engagement. Look, we know Texas is changing. The demographics are changing, and we see all these new folks coming into Texas. By 2020, Hispanics will be the largest demographic in the state. At this point, right now in Texas, all of our field staff, we don't have one of them that is bilingual. I think we'll get one in a week or so. But right now, we have got to do a better job reaching out to people who have our values across this state. Because, folks, the only thing standing between California and New York and the complete takeover of this country by a radical leftist ideal of government, the only thing standing in the way is Texas. And we cannot lose Texas. We have got to do a better job of recruiting and enabling folks to run and to win in November. And it would be my honor to serve. My background is in professional nursing management in big emergency departments and trauma centers. I have the capability and the experience to do that. And it would be my honor to represent you. And I'll look forward to speaking with you more. Thank you.
All right, so once again, most of the folks out there have completed cards, and we're just going to go through those, and these are the questions that you'll be asked. The first question goes to Mr. Dickey, and then again, Ms. Asche will have a minute to respond. Please share your knowledge of the Texas solution, and if you're in support of Texas solution.
Yeah, the Texas solution was an attempt a couple of conventions ago to come up with an approach that basically was provide amnesty for all and then close borders. That's roughly what it translated into. Now, as chairman of the party, I have committed that I will not, unlike the person who was involved in trying to push that through, and those of you who were there in 2014 with me remember that. Unlike that person, I will stay neutral. I trust and I've actually required of everyone serving as a chair for me on a platform and on rules to do the same, to be neutral in the contest until and unless they have to break a tie. And they shouldn't. If there's good, open, transparent debate, the will of the committee, the will of the body should be obvious. And so I'm not taking a position on the issue, but I'm very familiar with the history of it because I was there when those fights were happening.
Ms. Asche.
So, I'm going to tell you what I think and what I believe. We have a platform, and the challenge will be to keep our platform as conservative as we as Texans are. I absolutely believe that this sovereign nation cannot survive if we do not have a strong border. First of all, we have got to secure our borders before anything else, period. And I completely support President Trump in his efforts to secure our borders. Secondly, we cannot allow any amnesty for illegal aliens who crossed into our country. There cannot be any path to have those people become citizens and have a vote. Now, the Texas solution dealt with not exactly those issues, but it did deal with immigration, and I want you to know where I stand on that. I will work hard to make sure that we as Republicans support conservative Republican values. And I think border security is paramount among those. If we don't have a secure border, we don't have a country. And if you look at every other nation in the world, they secure their borders. Why are we not doing that?
Next question, I feel like I almost ought to modify, but I'll read it as is. What Republican leader do you most model yourself after, friend, other than the great Ronald Reagan?
Well, he took my one favorite, doggone it. So the second one, I will tell you, is probably somebody that a lot of you don't know. Some of you, if you've been involved in party politics for any length of time, you will, and that is my dad. His name is Bill Crocker. He is the former National Committee Man for the state of Texas. He served the state honorably for 8 years as a National Committee Man. He has served in every capacity across the Republican spectrum, from a precinct chair to an elections judge. And the thing that I want you to know about my dad, I don't want you to vote for me because of who he is. But what I want you to know is how high he set the bar for integrity. I have never known a person who has brought more honor and glory to God, to Texas, and to his family. And so he has set the bar for integrity this high. And I will spend every day as your chairman making sure that I match that bar of integrity.
The Republican I've admired the most, I'd have to go with Calvin Coolidge. He actually shrunk government. And that is, as we all know, is a serious challenge. Actually shrinking government, even back then, is not something for the faint of heart. And he was a principled leader who stood by those principles and fought for those principles, and then happily stepped down back long before we had the amendment that said the president can only be in office for 2 terms. It's a role model that I admire, and an example that I would hope that all elected Republicans would aspire to. It is not easy, and I can tell you, having been in this job for a year, it is not easy to stick to the principles and do the right thing, even when your friends would rather you do something slightly different. But it is so important. It is what we need, it's what the party deserves, and every time we've done it, no matter how hard it has been, the end result has always proved out right. And I thank God for that. Thank you.
This question starts with Mr. Dickey. Specifically, what does your outreach program consist of?
So we have, when I joined the party, there was a Black engagement person, a Asian engagement person, and a Hispanic engagement person. And they also coincidentally were the Black employee, the Asian employee. Shortly after I joined, the Black engagement person resigned, and the Asian engagement person had proven himself so well that we actually promoted him. He is now the deputy political director for the entire state.
Oh, gee.
Yeah. We also hired some new minority folks and talked about it internally. Were we going to continue with the past process of pigeonholing folks by race who were employed with us, or were we going to give people the most challenge and the most opportunity and let the party grow the most it could possibly grow? And hopefully the answer to you guys is just as self-explanatory as it was to us. And so we brought in new minority field people who have done an amazing job. And she said, at this very moment, we don't have a bilingual employee in the field. We have bilingual employees, we have bilingual consultants, and we have hundreds of bilingual volunteers now because we've been working on it. In fact, we were the first ones in the state, not even Governor Abbott, had 2 full teams of Spanish dominant speaking volunteers working door to door, door knocking. That's what we do.
So look, we can take credit for everything that Governor Abbott's staff is doing in the state of Texas, and we can take credit for everything that the RNC is paying for in the state of Texas. But what the reality is that right now, we have no professional engagement staff that is currently employed by the RPT that is not funded by the RNC. So I have spent 4 days in the Rio Grande Valley, a day in Laredo, passive. And I will tell you that one of the most important things that we have to do is we have to have staff that has our mission and our vision. And we, as much as we love the volunteers of this state, I don't think we want to rely on November and leave it to volunteers. We need to have boots on the ground. Obviously, if Governor Abbott's staff knows how important it is to have bilingual folks that can share our values, that make sure that those folks that have our pro-life, hardworking, pro-family, pro-business values, that we are able to say, which one looks like you? Because they're Republicans, folks, they just don't know it yet. And we have to do a better job engaging those folks.
So, similar question, slightly modified. You've spoken about your outreach to the different communities such as African American, Asian American, etc. This question focuses on outreach to the millennials. And we've all seen recently a number of polls that have shown that millennials don't quite understand how the free market system works.
I think one of the scariest things that we saw in the 2016 election was Bernie Sanders and the way that millennials flocked around Bernie Sanders and his tray of free stuff. Because they do not realize yet, like Margaret Thatcher said, that socialism is a great thing until you run out of other people's money. And so what we have to do, and what we've been doing, reaching with college Republicans and young Republicans, is make sure that they understand a couple of things. First of all, they want to be listened to. They want to be heard, and they want to be involved in the party. And secondly, that we make sure that we share our values and the ideals, that this really is the greatest country in the world. This is the only country where we value capitalism, where really the American dream is real and alive. And you can't do that any place but America. And the reason you can do that is because of the conservative government. And there's no better model than Texas, because people are flocking to Texas because of our business values and the climate that we've set. So we have to do a better job of including those millennials and including those college Republicans. And that's why we've been reaching out and involving them so heavily in our campaign.
Absolutely. The way you grow involvement with any voter, with anyone, and for the party is by focusing on those principles that you share. And you do it by giving a meaningful way to be involved. And so that's why, as soon as I became chair, we started encouraging new auxiliary and coalition groups. And that's why we got more interaction with the young Republicans, college Republicans, and even the high school Republicans. And participated in forums with them, gave them our data systems, the GOP data center and the Advantage Lockout. We gave it with them. We did for the first time a grassroots club partnership with the young Republicans, so you can join up and support both the young Republicans of Texas and the Republican Party of Texas at the same time. And in doing all of that, we ended up with more visible participation and really positive feedback from all of those groups. That we had, in the last year, had more involvement, more participation, more meaningful interaction that got them out in the field, out helping us grow the party than they had ever been able to do before.
Dickey, this is first. What is your position with regard to supporting race, not local, nonpartisan races of individuals who show themselves to be conservative?
Well, actually, I don't have to guess what my position is. For 4 years now, I've been making sure the party got involved in local, quote, nonpartisan races, which you can translate nonpartisan for Democrats only, right? Unless we take it seriously and we get involved. And so that's what we did in Travis County. In Travis County, it was kind of necessity being the mother of invention. We had very great difficulty winning partisan races because of the Democratic advantage in the county. So we decided to take the battle to them in the dozens of school boards and city councils that dotted the county. And we ended up blowing everybody's mind by getting 3 Republicans, not one, but 3 Republicans on the Austin City Council for the first time ever in history. And then last year, we got a lot of a resolution passed on the SRAC, and then we got a rule change passed in the SRAC just a month ago. And as a result, we wasted no time. We got involved in the Cedar Park City Council races and made sure that we prevented them from getting the majority, the Democrats from getting the majority they were trying to get. I personally walked in those city council races. We had people doing phone banking. We had a lot of people involved. We did it in Petterland. We did it in Denton County. We got involved in local races with the county to make sure that we do not cede that territory to the Democrats. We cannot let them do that.
Well, I wish you'd gotten involved in my race when I ran for city council in Frisco about 3 years ago, because everybody in Frisco claimed to be a Republican. The only problem was you'd never seen a single one of them at any Republican event ever. And the thing that I was told repeatedly was, you're too conservative. And if you're a real Republican, you can't even say that you're a real Republican as you're knocking on doors. So I'm absolutely supportive of getting involved in local races, but you have to be very, very careful doing that, especially when everybody else says they are Republicans. And secondly, you can't leave your county or your area untouched. Unfortunately, during the same time that my opponent was working to get people elected in the city council race in Travis County, there were 21 races, mostly judges, that had no Republican running at all. Now that is a severe deficit, because that means that the Democrats don't even have to spend a dime to win in Travis County. And folks, I was raised in Travis County by 2 conservative parents. I am living proof that you can raise a Christian conservative Republican in Travis County if you work at it.
Okay, Ms. Ashe, the first one's to you. Speaking of judicial races, I believe we're going away from straight ballot voting. And so how do you see that affecting down ballot races like the judicial positions? And what is your position doing away with straight voting?
So this is a concern. In some areas, it's going to help us. In some areas, it's going to be very, very challenging, because as you know, excuse me, as you know, that it is challenging to get people to go all the way down the ballot to vote for JP. And those are the farm teams, right? So when the Democrats want to start running people and getting them, bringing them up in the party, they start filling those races at the JP level. In some areas across the state, like the Rio Grande Valley, like El Paso, like Laredo, it is going to help us in some races, because some of those folks have voted traditionally Democrat. And there are still people that they would like to vote for, but we can get them to cross over and vote for specific Republicans because we don't have straight ticket voting. But it is going to make our job of turning out the vote and getting people to vote Republican all the way from the top of the ticket to the bottom, it is no doubt going to make it harder. And so we have got to do a better job of doing that.
Oh, so yes, the law was passed this last session, and in 2020 there will not be straight ticket voting. And as with most government things, right, there's a one-size-fit-all solution where we had it and now it's going to disappear. Now, there are a lot of states where it doesn't exist, so it's not a case of not having it anywhere else or having it everywhere else and not here. But unintended consequences tell us that we're not sure what the outcome's gonna be. Well, I can tell you that because of straight ticket voting, in the 2016 presidential election in Harris County, we had dozens of judges wiped out in one fell swoop because straight ticket voting took out those judges. And had there not been straight ticket voting, it's less likely those judges would have been taken out in one fell swoop. On the other hand, we don't know if that means that those down ballot candidates are now going to have to work a lot harder and raise a lot more money and do a better job spreading their own name recognition because of drop off down the ballot. And I can tell you from experience, depending on what the race is, you can get drop off of 80% when you're 10 or 15 down on the ballot, or you can get drop off of only about 40% when you're 10 or 15 down on the ballot. There's no way to know. It depends on a lot of factors. We shall see.
This was to you, to start with. What is your position with regard to censuring other Republicans?
My position on this, as with everything else, is if I am elected your chair, and since I have been elected your chair, I do what you guys asked me to do. That's what I fought for when I was in the trenches with you over the last decade and plus, and that's what I think the party should do. The party should represent the will of the voters. And so when 60 counties passed votes of no confidence, when over 2/3 of the SRC voted for that, when 75% of his own county voted for it, I supported them. And that was in accordance with the rule that the delegates passed at the last convention. It's up to you guys who are delegates to decide. In fact, who's going to be a delegate to the convention? All right, that's exactly what I was hoping. Wonderful. It's up to you guys to decide whether you want censure to exist or not, and what conditions you want there to be around it, and what parameters you want there to be around it. And whatever those are, that's what I'll follow. Thank you.
So if we're going to have Rule 44, which is the censure rule, I would like to see it strengthened and modified, which I think is what you probably want to know. Look, I'm concerned that we have a censure rule, but we didn't censure someone who posted a naked selfie of themselves. I'm concerned that we did censure someone who had said they were no longer running, they were out of the race, and at the same time, are we censuring the people who actually elect that person as the Speaker of the House? That's why it came about. I'm very concerned that we make sure, our country is founded on the will of the people and the will of the voters. And we need to make sure that if we are going to do anything that affects that will, that we are very, very careful about it, and we have very select enforcement of it with that, rules about that. Because one of the things that we have seen is that it has alienated a significant portion of our party. And folks, when we start telling people that they're not good enough as Republicans, that's a problem. When we need to be uniting this party, because our true enemy is the Democrats. And I am the most conservative person I know. But like Ronald Reagan, I would rather deal with a Republican who votes with me 80% of the time than a Democrat who never does.
Alexis, I'll start with you. What is your position with regard to the Article 5 convention? And if elected chair, will you give opponents to the Article 5 convention equal treatment?
Well, I absolutely support, you're talking about the Convention of States, correct? Yes, I absolutely support the Convention of States. I talked with Senator Brian Birdwell at length about this particular issue, and it is the one recourse that we have. I have to tell you, as I'm an endowment member, a lifelong member of the NRA, and I was initially concerned that the call could potentially be opened to monkeying around with, for lack of a better term. Senator Birdwell assured me that that is not possible, and so that the Convention of States may be our only recourse for taking control and making sure that the federal government does not abuse its power. So I am completely behind that. I'm sorry, what was the second part of that?
The second part of the question was, will you give those with an opposite view equal treatment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All the Republicans need to be heard. They need to be heard, and we need to listen to what their views are. Absolutely.
So the Article 5 Convention of States was a legislative priority for the party, and it was passed. So, of course, I would have fought for it. It was passed before I needed to, but I absolutely would have fought for it. As I would fight for everything else that you, the delegates, decide. As for whether I would whether I would give equal treatment and equal time to anyone against any item, that has been absolutely the hallmark of my tenure as chair. Open, transparent, public debate where all are respected and given an option has been a clear tradition of my leadership as chair. And just to give you a feel for how obvious that has been, my predecessor managed 3 meetings with the current SREC. And in those 3 meetings, they only managed to get through 3 votes per meeting, and the average win rate was 72%, but he had to break or make a tie every single meeting. And in my 5 meetings, we've done 9 average votes per meeting, and I've never had to even come close to breaking a tie. It's an average 84% agreement rate because of open, transparent debate, both in the committees and on the floor, as we just did at our last meeting. And it's all live streamed, by the way, so please watch it. And if you have any questions about those numbers, the minutes are all on the website.
Okay, this one is, starts this one. Again, I'm trying to understand these questions. Many people are concerned that there may be a libertarian takeover of the SREC. How do you address that, and you consider that a concern?
One of the things I promised when I first became a county chair was that I would be welcoming to all wings of the party. And that's why I brought on as my vice chair someone who had been on staff with K. Bailey Hutchison, who I'd never been involved with that part of the party. And then I promised that when I was elected for this position, I promised that I would make sure to be welcoming to all wings of the party. And sure enough, we have folks from the former Woodville area in Harris County. We have folks from former Ron Paul times. We have folks from K. Bailey Hutchison times. We have folks from all the wings of the party. The right way to handle any of that is to be welcoming and open and inviting to all and have open and transparent debate and let the delegates decide, or the SREC decide, as the case may be. If someone's saying, I'm really afraid that so-and-so, a group, is going to take over the SREC, the answer is easy. You've got your SD caucus. Just vote for somebody else. That's your control. We're the party of personal responsibility. You're the ones who have control over that, not me.
I'm concerned about this because I'm a Republican, I'm not a libertarian, and I have conservative values. I have conservative values that are pro-life, pro-family, pro-Israel, pro-defense, that do not mesh with the national platform of the libertarians. And I'm very concerned about this because one of the things that we have seen, 2 things. One of the caucuses that was brought in to the Republican, the RPT, was the Republican Liberty Caucus, the Libertarians. And as a result, our coalition's chair, our auxiliaries chair, was removed and replaced with someone that was more friendly to doing that. I'm very concerned about that. I'm very concerned about the committees that, like platform, rules. The chair has the opportunity to put people on those committees. If the SRE folks don't agree, then the chair gets to rule. And what we have seen is that the majority of those folks have been libertarian-leaning folks that the current chairman has put into place when the SREC folks have not agreed. And I think that's a concern, because we need to work with all Republicans, but the Libertarians had their own party. They were not successful, and so they came to the Republican Party. And we need to, I am a conservative, not a libertarian.
Ms. Ashe, this one starts with you. When someone decides to run against another for elected office, it's because they don't agree with something that their opponent stands for or has done in the past. Can you be specific and in great detail explain why you think that you would be a better candidate than Mr. Dickey?
Yes, a couple of reasons. One is integrity. Folks have criticized me for being negative, and what I'm honestly trying to do is be truthful. There is a history of fraud that was never brought out before that I think creates a window into a person's character. Now, I understand that people make mistakes, and I absolutely believe in grace and forgiveness. But what you need to see after that mistake is a 180 change and a difference. What we have seen is not that. We have seen a person who, the night before elected chairman, promised to keep the party officers, and 5 minutes later, after taking office, released them, fired them, all but one. That is on video, and so you can look at that video if you'd like to. We need a chairman who says what they mean, believes what they say, and follows through. Look, I'm a Texan, a native Texan. Our word is our bond, and that is what we are supposed to do. We have seen time and time again where the financial statements have been maybe perhaps spun is a good word, and been a little bit disingenuous about where our financial situation is. Texans hold their elected officials accountable. The Republicans are known for that, and that is the primary reason why I think you need to choose me as opposed to my opponent.
I understand, since Ms. Ashe has not been involved in party politics, that our finances may not be clear to her. But the accounting staff that has been around since before even Chairman Ministeri was in, the executive director of the party that's been in since well before I arrived, they are the ones who produce our financials, not I. They are the ones who have reported that the first 4 months of this year, we have raised over $621,000, which is well more than needed for not only that, but it's the second highest number in the last 8 years, and the only year that even came close was 2012, which was a presidential year under Chairman Ministeri. Yeah, we have. I go to a lot of meetings, and at every meeting, I ask for more money because that's a big part of the job. So by the way, if any of you are not members of the Grassroots Club, please join it. You need to join the Grassroots Club at the $25 level, please, if you would. We have been winning, and all of this is public because we have established a more transparent, more visible scenario than ever before. You don't have to take our word for anything. It's all on record. It's all reported by others. It's all filed with the elections commissions. It's all there.
Ms. Ashe, in your opinion, what is the status of the Republican Party of Texas financially?
Well, I'm glad that was a follow-up, because I would have loved to have rebutted what my opponent just said. So the way that you spin the numbers is you report that we have $1.2 million in the bank, when over $600,000 of that happens to be restricted funds that are only available to hold elections. That is disingenuous, because the real operating cash you have is closer to $500,000. And I forgot the number that he just said. I think it was $400,000. that is not enough for our operating expenses on a monthly basis, because our budget on a monthly basis is $130,000. Oh wait, it's not anymore because we don't have any engagement staff that we pay for. So now it's down to $107,000. Look, let me tell you how much money we have on hand from the last cash on hand report, which came out at the end of April. We had $360,000 in the bank for convention, a $1.6 million convention, 1.56. We had $114,000 for victory. Last time we did victory, it was $1.2 million. And we had $525,000 cash on hand. That is less than 5 months operating expenses. And that's without any engagement staff. Now that's the true financial picture, and you can spin it any way you want, but he said at one debate, and I'm quoting him, liars lie, but figures, well, how'd you say it? Figures don't lie, liars figure, but figures don't lie. And I just gave you the figures.
Wow. Again, for those of us who've been involved in this for a while, you know that the convention, which, as she said correctly, actually this year it's going to be, the budget is over $1.5 million. By the time we're done paying for convention this year, we will have spent more on convention than we ever have, because costs are going up dramatically. There are only 4 places in the state where we can even have it. This is the first time we've had it in San Antonio in 12 years. Just 4 years ago, it was only $1.1 million to put it on. As a result, we had to work very hard to make sure that the convention pays for itself. And in large donor donations for the convention alone, we will be reporting to the officials committee on Monday that we have raised over $500,000 in large donations for contribution sponsorships for the convention. That is more than any other chairman has ever raised for the convention. So yes, I get that this gets complicated. We have an account, money comes in, money goes out. So yes, at any given moment, there may only be $300,000 or $400,000 in that account. Or there may be $50,000 because we may have just written a $400,000 check. But the bottom line is we are exactly on path, ahead of budget in most of our categories in terms of fundraising. In fact, in year-to-date numbers, we are ahead. We're not only ahead in every number, but 621,000 year-to-date raised. It's a record.
Following up on the financials topic, Mr. Dickey, after you were elected by SRAC, have many major donors left the party?
You know, when I promised that if elected, I would stand up for our principals, that was the threat, that was the rumor. And that's what you'll hear from moderates all the time. If you stand up and you take a stand, the money will disappear. And the truth was, those people weren't giving money anyway. You know, after the censure, I got 2 emails from people saying, I will never give to the Republican Party. And we checked their donation history. One of them had given $20,000 to the Speaker of the House and had given $5,000 to a Democrat. And not a thing to the party ever. And the other one had done $20,000 to the Speaker and $5,000 to a Republican who's no longer in office, and had never given a dime to the party ever. The truth is, that's not where the passion and the dedication and the commitment is anyway, which is why we've set a record in new number of 5,000 and up donors to the party. In my first 10 months alone, we did more than was done in all of the presidential year 2016. And we continue to add new donors in a significant way, and we've grown the Grassroots Club, and we've grown online donations, we've grown email fundraising, all of our fundraising. It's the same thing. We fight for a principle, we make it obvious, we take a stand that attracts support, that attracts voters, that attracts new voters, that does our engagement, and that gets donations.
Well, like Ronald Reagan said, there you go again. Because if you look at the financial reports that were just prepared by the Republican Party of Texas. And yes, folks, I know I'm blonde, but I can read financial statements based on the business experience that I had running major emergency departments in the past. Our projected for 2018 for online contributions is 120,000. We're only at 48,000. We have lost some major donors, and I have visited with several of them. And the reason they say they are not donating now is specifically not because of our policy on guns, not because of our policy on the wall, not because of anything that deals with our fundamental principles as Republicans, but they have pulled back from leadership. One of those is a huge corporate sponsor that has sponsored our convention at over $100,000 every year. And they said they will not contribute to the RPT unless we have a change in leadership. One of the banks that I visited with said the exact same thing. So that is a concern. Please be aware that some of the largest, there have been about 6 large donors that have funded the party over the last 11 months. Only 6.
Ms. Ashe, this was to you first. How do you plan to grow our party?
Well, twofold. One, we have to hire the best staff that has to work at the RPT, that understands our mission and vision to grow this party and to include everybody as a Republican who believes in our ideal. If you travel, as I have, to the Rio Grande Valley, to Laredo, to El Paso, as I said, one of the principal ways that we need to grow the party is to reach out to folks that have our values. You know, we had a person that was working with the party that was doing a phenomenal job working with faith-based organizations, specifically Hispanic faith-based organizations. I had an opportunity to worship with those Hispanic evangelical pastors down in the Rio Grande Valley, and they are standing up for our values and telling folks that if you want to vote, you really have to vote your values. And the Democrats don't have their faith values. There's no way you can do that. That person was terminated, and the party said in a letter written to that individual that we are going a different direction. I think that is a travesty. We absolutely need to be engaging faith-based organizations. We need to be engaging Hispanic folks. We need to be engaging African American folks. We need to have tons of bilingual folks in the office and in the field in order to share our values with people that believe like we do. They just don't know they're Republicans yet.
Oh, how do you plan to unite the party?
Well,
And grow the party?
yeah, grow the if you've been listening, there's a theme. You grow the party by focusing on the things on which we agree. And this is where it's a real advantage. So we have a platform that's got 262 platform points. Because we are not the party of mind number robots, and we're not the party that demands slavish agreements on every little thing. Those 262 platform points, every one of them got a supermajority of the votes of the delegates last convention. But none of them got 100% of the vote. Not one. So I can go to any legislator, and we did this during the special session, and said, hey, the governor put 20 items on the special session call, 10 of them are right out of our platform. These 10 items, which can I work with you on? And we were able to work with legislators that normally they get painted with a brush of this one's just conservative or this one's moderate. The reality is there are issues on which we can't agree. Well, the same thing happens in the field. And that's why for a year now, we've been working on doing voter ID on voter beliefs and issues, not on candidates. Last August, it wouldn't have done any good to say, what do you think of Governor Abbott? We said, what do you think of tax reform? What do you think of life? What do you think of Obamacare? What do you think of these issues? And as a result, we have their names and their phone numbers and their emails, not just a good-looking post on Facebook.
is there a problem at the RTP with regard to complying with the Freedom of Information Act? Sorry, they didn't sign the cards. So I don't-
So, A, in Texas, we have an Open Records Act, not even just, which is much better than the Freedom of Information Act, if you guys are aware. That's one of the many ways Texas is better. And the answer is no. We've had literally the most open and transparent administration that the party has ever had. And I'll give you just one big example. In between quarterly SRAC meetings, the officials committee runs the party. And the officials committee is made up of a mix of people who are nominated by my predecessor when he was first made chair, and by the SRAC themselves. And that committee conducts the business of the party. And until I came along, the meetings of that committee were all held automatically in executive session. And even other SRAC members were kept out of knowing what was discussed in those meetings. I have automatically had every single one of those handled in open session on a conference call that anyone can listen in. And we've done online streaming of every single meeting. We're going to be online streaming. We're going to have Google Docs of the platform and rules and everything in working order for the conventions, for the temporary committees before the convention. It has been, nothing has been more open ever.
Well, I think it's interesting because while we talk about open and transparency, some things have occurred that we're not really sure how they happened. For instance, my understanding is that Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition, also known as RAMP, which is a pro-marijuana organization. I looked up their statement of purpose, and they support not only medical marijuana, but they also support recreational marijuana. That is not according to our platform. They did not go before the officials committee.